Section 17 of Childhood's Favorites and Fairy Stories. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Clarica. Childhood's Favorites and Fairy Stories by various authors. Section 17. The Sweet Soup. Once on a time there was a poor but very good little girl who lived alone with her mother, and when my story begins they had nothing in the house to eat. So the child went out into the forest, and there she met an old woman who already knew her distress, and who presented her with a pot which had the following power. If one said to it, "Boil, little pot," it would cook sweet soup, and when one said, "Stop, little pot," it would immediately cease to boil. The little girl took the pot home to her mother, and now their poverty and distresses were at an end, for they could have sweet broth as often as they pleased. One day, however, the little girl went out, and in her absence the mother said, "Boil, little pot." So it began to cook, and she soon ate all she wished. But when the poor woman wanted to have the pot stop, she found she did not know the word. Away, therefore, the pot boiled, and very quickly was over the edge, and as it boiled and boiled, the kitchen presently became full, then the house, and the next house, and soon the whole street. It seemed likely to satisfy all the world, for, though there was the greatest necessity to do so, nobody knew how to stop it. At last, when only a very small cottage of all the village was left unfilled with soup, the child returned and said at once, "Stop, little pot." Immediately it ceased to boil, but whoever wishes to enter the village now must eat his way through the soup. End of Section 17.
Section 18 of Childhood's Favorites and Fairy Stories. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Childhood's Favorites and Fairy Stories by various authors. Section 18. The Straw, the Coal, and the Bean. All alone in a quiet little village lived a poor old woman. One day she had a dish of beans that she wanted to cook for dinner. So she made a fire on the hearth, and in order that it should burn up quickly, she lighted it with a handful of straw. She hung the pot over the fire and poured in the beans, but one fell on the floor without her noticing it and rolled away beside a piece of straw. Soon afterwards a live coal flew out of the fire and joined their company. Then the straw began to speak. "Dear friends," said he, "whence come you?" "I was fortunate enough to spring out of the fire," answered the coal. "Had I not exerted myself to get out when I did, I should most certainly have been burnt to ashes." "I have also just managed to save my skin," said the bean. "Had the old woman succeeded in putting me in the pot, I should have been stewed without mercy, just as my comrades are being served now." "My fate might have been no better," the straw told them. "The old woman burnt 60 of my brothers at once, but fortunately I was able to slip through her fingers." "What shall we do now?" said the coal. "Well," answered the bean, "my opinion is that we have all been so fortunate as to escape death, we should leave this place before any new misfortune overtakes us. Let us all three become traveling companions and set out upon a journey to some unknown country." This suggestion pleased both the straw and the coal, so away they all went at once. Before long they came to a brook, and as there was no bridge across it, they did not know how to get to the other side, but the straw had a good idea. "I will lay myself over the water, and you can walk across me as though I were a bridge," he said. So he stretched himself from one bank to the other, and the coal, who was one of a hasty disposition, at once tripped gaily over the newly built bridge. Halfway across she hesitated, and began to feel afraid of the rushing water beneath her. She dared go no further, but neither would she return. But she stood there so long that the straw caught fire, broke in two, and fell into the stream. Of course the coal was bound to follow. No sooner did she touch the water than hiss, zish! Out she went, and never glowed again. The bean, who was a careful fellow, had stayed on the bank to watch how the coal got across, before trusting himself to such a slender bridge. But when he saw what very queer figures his friends cut, he could not help laughing. He laughed and laughed till he could not stop, and at length he split his side. It would have gone badly with him then, had not a tailor happened to pass by. He was a kind-hearted fellow, and at once took out his needle and thread and began to repair the mischief. The bean thanked him politely, for he knew that the tailor had saved his life. But unfortunately he would use black thread, and from that time till today every bean has a little black stitch in its side. End of Section 18, The Straw, the Coal, and the Bean.
Section 19 of Childhood's Favorites and Fairy Stories. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Clarica. Childhood's Favorites and Fairy Stories by various authors. Section 19. Why the Bear Has a Stumpy Tail. One winter's day the bear met the fox, who came slinking along with a string of fish he had stolen. "Hi, stop a minute! Where did you get those from?" demanded the bear. "Oh, my Lord Bruin, I've been out fishing and caught them," said the fox. So the bear had a mind to learn to fish, too, and bade the fox tell him how he was to set about it. "Oh, it is quite easy," answered the fox, and soon learned. "You've only got to go upon the ice, and cut a hole, and stick your tail down through it, and hold it there as long as you can. You're not to mind if it smarts a little, that's when the fish bite. The longer you hold it there, the more fish you'll get, and then all at once out with it, with a cross pull sideways, and a strong pull, too." Well, the bear did as the fox said, and though he felt very cold, and his tail smarted very much, he kept it a long, long time down the hole, till at last it was frozen in, though of course he did not know that. Then he pulled it out with a strong pull, and it snapped short off, and that's why Bruin goes about with a stumpy tail to this day. End of Section 19.
Section 20 of Childhood's Favourites and Fairy Stories. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Ruth Golding. Childhood's Favourites and Fairy Stories by various authors. Section 20. The Three Little Pigs. Once upon a time, when pigs could talk, and no one had ever heard of bacon, there lived an old piggy mother with her three little sons. They had a very pleasant home in the middle of an oak forest, and were all just as happy as the day was long, until one sad year the acorn crop failed. Then, indeed, poor Mrs. Piggy-wiggy often had hard work to make both ends meet. One day she called her sons to her, and with tears in her eyes told them that she must send them out into the wide world to seek their fortune. She kissed them all round, and the three little pigs set out upon their travels, each taking a different road, and carrying a bundle slung on a stick across his shoulder. The first little pig had not gone far before he met a man carrying a bundle of straw. So he said to him, "Please, man, give me that straw to build me a house." The man was very good-natured, so he gave him the bundle of straw, and the little pig built a pretty little house with it. No sooner was it finished, and the little pig thinking of going to bed, than a wolf came along, knocked at the door, and said, little pig, let me come in." But the little pig laughed softly and answered, "No, no, by the hair of my chinny chin chin." Then said the wolf sternly, "I will make you let me in, for I'll huff, and I'll puff, and I'll blow your house in." So he huffed, and he puffed, and he blew his house in, because, you see, it was only of straw and too light. And when he had blown the house in, he ate up the little pig, and did not leave so much as the tip of his tail. The second little pig also met a man, and he was carrying a bundle of furs. So Piggy said politely, "Please, kind man, will you give me that furs to build me a house?" The man agreed, and Piggy set to work to build himself a snug little house before the night came on. It was scarcely finished when the wolf came along and said, little pig, let me come in." "No, no, by the hair of my chinny chin chin," answered the second little pig. "Then I'll huff, and I'll puff, and I'll blow your house in," said the wolf. So he huffed, and he puffed, and he puffed, and he huffed, and at last he blew the house in and gobbled the little pig up in a trice. Now the third little pig met a man with a load of bricks and mortar, and he said, "Please, man, will you give me those bricks to build a house with?" So the man gave him the bricks and mortar, and a little trowel as well, and the little pig built himself a nice strong little house. As soon as it was finished, the wolf came to call, just as he had done to the other little pigs, and said, little pig, let me in." But the little pig answered, "No, no, by the hair of my chinny chin chin." "Then," said the wolf, "I'll huff, and I'll puff, and I'll blow your house in." Well, he huffed, and he puffed, and he puffed, and he huffed, and he huffed, and he puffed, but he could not get the house down. At last he had no breath left to huff and puff with, so he sat down outside the little pig's house and thought for a while. Presently he called out, "Little pig, I know where there is a nice field of turnips." "Where?" said the little pig. "Behind the farmer's house 3 fields away, and if you will be ready to-morrow morning I will call for you, and we will go together and get some breakfast." "Very well," said the little pig, "I will be sure to be ready. What time do you mean to start?" "At 6 o'clock," replied the wolf. Well, the wise little pig got up at 5, scampered away to the field, and brought home a fine load of turnips before the wolf came. At 6 o'clock the wolf came to the little pig's house and said, "Little pig, are you ready?" "Ready?" cried the little pig. "Why, I have been to the field and come back long ago, and now I am busy boiling a potful of turnips for breakfast." The wolf was very angry indeed, but he made up his mind to catch the little pig somehow or other. So he told him that he knew where there was a nice apple tree. "Where?" said the little pig. "Round the hill in the squire's orchard," the wolf said. "So if you will promise to play me no tricks, I will come for you to-morrow morning at 5 o'clock, and we will go there together and get some rosy-cheeked apples." The next morning Piggy got up at 4 o'clock, and was off and away long before the wolf came. But the orchard was a long way off, and besides he had the tree to climb, which is a difficult matter for a little pig, so that before the sack he had brought with him was quite filled, he saw the wolf coming towards him. He was dreadfully frightened, but he thought it better to put a good face on the matter. So when the wolf said, "Little pig, why are you here before me? Are they nice apples?" he replied at once, "Yes, very. I will throw down one for you to taste." So he picked an apple and threw it so far that whilst the wolf was running to fetch it, he had time to jump down and scamper away home. The next day the wolf came again and told the little pig that there was going to be a fair in the town that afternoon, and asked him if he would go with him. "Oh yes," said the pig, "I will go with pleasure. What time will you be ready to start?" "At 3:30, said the wolf. Of course the little pig started long before the time, went to the fair, and bought a fine large butter churn, and was trotting away with it on his back, when he saw the wolf coming. He did not know what to do, so he crept into the churn to hide, and by so doing started it rolling. Down the hill it went, rolling over and over, with the little pig squeaking inside. The wolf could not think what the strange thing rolling down the hill could be, so he turned tail and ran away home in a fright, without ever going to the fair at all. He went to the little pig's house to tell him how frightened he had been by a large round thing which came rolling past him down the hill. "Ha ha!" laughed the little pig. "So I frightened you, eh? I'd been to the fair and bought a butter churn. When I saw you I got inside it and rolled down the hill." This made the wolf so angry that he declared that he would eat up the little pig, and that nothing should save him, for he would jump down the chimney. But the clever little pig hung a pot full of water over the hearth, and then made a blazing fire, and just as the wolf was coming down the chimney he took off the cover, and in fell the wolf. In a second the little pig had popped the lid on again. Then he boiled the wolf and ate him for supper, and after that he lived quietly and comfortably all his days, and was never troubled by a wolf again. End of section 20. Recording by Ruth Golding.
Section 21 of Childhood's Favorites and Fairy Stories. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Section 21. The Three Children. 3 children sliding on the ice upon a summer's day. As it fell out, they all fell in, the rest they ran away. Now, had these children been at home, or sliding on dry ground, 10,000 pounds to 1 penny, they had not all been drowned. You parents all that children have, and you too that have none, if you would have them safe abroad, pray keep them safe at home. Anonymous. End of section 21.
Section 22 of Children's Favorites and Fairy Stories. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Sarah Williams. Childhood's Favorites and Fairy Stories by various authors. Section 22. The Owl and the Pussycat. The owl and the pussycat went to sea in a beautiful pea-green boat. They took some honey and plenty of money wrapped up in a 5-pound note. The owl looked up to the stars above and sang to a small guitar, "Oh, lovely pussy, oh, pussy, my love, what a beautiful pussy you are, you are, you are, what a beautiful pussy you are." The pussy said to the owl, "You elegant fowl, how charmingly sweet you sing. Oh, let us be married, too long we have tarried, but what shall we do for a ring?" They sailed away for a year and a day to the land where the bong tree grows, and there in a wood a piggy-wig stood, with the ring at the end of his nose, his nose, with the ring at the end of his nose. "Dear pig, are you willing to sell for 1 shilling your ring?" said the piggy. "I will." So they took it away and were married next day by the turkey who lives on the hill. They dined on mince and slices of quince, which they ate with a runcible spoon, and hand in hand on the edge of the sand they danced by the light of the moon. The moon, they danced by the light of the moon. Edward Lear. End of Section 22.
Section 23 of Childhood's Favorites and Fairy Stories. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Johnny J.T. Childhood's Favorites and Fairy Stories by various authors. Section 23. Kindness to Animals. Little children, never give pain to the things that feel and live. Let the gentle robin come for the crumbs you save at home. As his meat you throw along, he'll repay you with a song. Never hurt the timid hare peeping from her green grass lair. Let her come and sport and play on the lawn at close of day. The little lark goes soaring high to the bright windows of the sky, singing as if 'twere always spring, and fluttering on an untired wing. Oh, let him sing his happy song, nor do these gentle creatures wrong. End of Section 23.
Section 24 of Childhood's Favorites and Fairy Stories. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Sarah Williams. Childhood's Favorites and Fairy Stories by various authors. Section 24. How doth the little busy bee? How doth the little busy bee improve each shining hour, and gather honey all the day from every opening flower? How skillfully she bends her cell, how neat she spreads the wax, and labors hard to store it well with the sweet food she makes. In works of labor or of skill I would be busy too, for Satan finds some mischief still for idle hands to do. In books or work or healthful play let my first years be passed, that I may give for every day some good account at last. Isaac Watts. End of Section 24.
Section 25 of Childhood's Favorites and Fairy Stories. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Ralph Snelson. Childhood's Favorites and Fairy Stories by various authors. Section 25. Suppose. Suppose, my little lady, your doll should break her head. Could you make it whole by crying till your eyes and nose are red? And wouldn't it be pleasanter to treat it as a joke, and say you're glad 'twas Dolly's and not your head that broke? Suppose you're dressed for walking, and the rain comes pouring down. Will it clear off any sooner because you scold and frown? And wouldn't it be nicer for you to smile than pout, and so make sunshine in the house when there is none without? Suppose your task, my little man, is very hard to get. Will it make it any easier for you to sit and fret? And wouldn't it be wiser than waiting like a dunce, to go to work in earnest and learn the thing at once? Suppose that some boys have a horse and some a coach and pair. Will it tire you less while walking to say it isn't fair? And wouldn't it be nobler to keep our temper sweet, and in your heart be thankful you can walk upon your feet? And suppose the world don't please you, nor the way some people do, do you think the whole creation will be altered just for you? And isn't it, my boy or girl, the wisest, bravest plan, whatever comes or doesn't come, to do the best you can? End of Section 25.
Section 26 of Childhood's Favorites and Fairy Stories. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Clarica. Childhood's Favorites and Fairy Stories by various authors. Twinkle, twinkle. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. Up above the world so high, like a diamond in the sky. When the glorious sun is set, when the grass with dew is wet, then you show your little light, twinkle, twinkle all the night. When the blazing sun is gone, when he nothing shines upon, then you show your little light, twinkle, twinkle all the night. In the dark blue sky you keep, and often through my curtains peep, for you never shut your eye till the sun is in the sky. As your bright and tiny spark lights the traveller in the dark, though I know not what you are, twinkle, twinkle, little star. Anonymous. End of section 26.
Section 27 of Childhood's Favorites and Fairy Stories. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Johnny J.T. Childhood's Favorites and Fairy Stories by various authors. Section 27. Pretty Cow by Jane Taylor. Thank you, pretty cow, that made pleasant milk to soak my bread, every day and every night, warm and fresh and sweet and white. Do not chew the hemlock rank growing on the weedy bank, but the yellow cow's lips eat, that will make it very sweet. Where the purple violet grows, where the bubbling water flows, where the grass is fresh and fine, pretty cow, go there and dine. End of section 27, Pretty Cow.
Section 28 of Childhood's Favorites and Fairy Stories. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Ralph Snelson. Childhood's Favorites and Fairy Stories by various authors. Section 28. The Three Little Kittens. A Cat's Tale with Additions. The three little kittens lost their mittens, and they began to cry. "Oh, mother dear, we very much fear that we have lost our mittens." "Lost your mittens, you naughty kittens? Then you shall have no pie." "Meow, meow, meow." "No, you shall have no pie." "Meow, meow, meow." The three little kittens found their mittens, and they began to cry, "Oh, mother dear, see here, see here! See, we have found our mittens." "Put on your mittens, you silly kittens, and you may have some pie." Purr, purr, purr. "Oh, let us have the pie." Purr, purr, purr. The three little kittens put on their mittens and soon ate up the pie. "Oh, mother dear, we greatly fear that we have soiled our mittens." "Soiled your mittens, you naughty kittens?" Then they began to sigh. Meow, meow, meow. Then they began to sigh. Meow, meow, meow. The three little kittens washed their mittens and hung them out to dry. "Oh, mother dear, do not you hear that we have washed our mittens?" "Washed your mittens? Oh, you're good kittens. But I smell a rat close by." "Hush, hush, meow, meow. We smell a rat close by. Meow, meow, meow." End of section 28.
Section 29 of Childhood's Favorites and Fairy Stories. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Kaylee K. Childhood's Favorites and Fairy Stories by various authors. Section 29. Land of Counterpane by Robert Louis Stevenson. When I was sick and lay abed, I had two pillows at my head, and all my toys beside me lay to keep me happy all the day. And sometimes for an hour or so I watched my lead and soldiers go, with different uniforms and drills, among the bedclothes through the hills. And sometimes set my ships and fleets all up and down among the sheets, or brought my trees and houses out, and planted cities all about. I was the giant great and still, that sits upon the Pillow Hill, and sees before him dale and plain, the pleasant land of Counterpane. End of section 29, Land of Counterpane.
Section 30 of Childhood's Favorites and Fairy Stories. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Clarica. Childhood's Favorites and Fairy Stories by various authors. Section 30. There was a little girl. There was a little girl, and she had a little curl right in the middle of her forehead. When she was good, she was very, very good, and when she was bad, she was horrid. One day she went upstairs when her parents, unawares, in the kitchen were occupied with meals, and she stood upon her head in her little trundle bed, and then began hurraying with her heels. Her mother heard the noise, and she thought it was the boys, a-playing at a combat in the attic. But when she climbed the stair, and found Jemima there, she took and she did spank her most emphatic. Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. End of section 30.
Section 31 of Childhood's Favorites and Fairy Stories. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Johnny J.T. Childhood's Favorites and Fairy Stories by various authors. Section 31. The Boy Who Never Told a Lie. Once there was a little boy with curly hair and pleasant eye, a boy who always told the truth, and never, never told a lie. And when he trotted off to school, the children all about would cry, "There goes the curly-headed boy, the boy that never tells a lie." And everybody loved him so, because he always told the truth, that every day as he grew up, 'twas said, "There goes the honest youth." And when the people that stood near would turn to ask the reason why, the answer would be always this: because he never tells a lie. End of section 31. The Boy Who Never Told a Lie. This recording by Johnny J.T. is in the public domain.
Section 32 of Charlotte's Favorites and Fairy Stories. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Vera Unreal. Charlotte's Favorites and Fairy Stories by various authors. Foreign Children. Little Indian, Sioux or Crow. Little Frosty Eskimo. Little Duck or Japanese. Oh, don't you wish that you were me? You have seen the scarlet trees, and the lions overseas. You have eaten ostrich eggs, and turned the turtles off their legs. Such a life is very fine, but it's not so nice as mine. You must often, as you trot, have wear it not to be abroad. You have curious things to eat. I am fat on proper meat. You must dwell beyond the foam, but I am safe and live at home. Little Indian, Sioux or Crow. Little Frosty Eskimo. Little Duck or Japanese. Oh, don't you wish that you were me? End of section number 32.
Section 33 of Childhood's Favorites and Fairy Stories. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Clarica. Childhood's Favorites and Fairy Stories by various authors. The Unseen Playmate. When children are playing alone on the green, in comes the playmate that never was seen. When children are happy and lonely and good, The friend of the children comes out of the wood. Nobody heard him, and nobody saw. His is a picture you never could draw. But he's sure to be present, abroad or at home, when children are happy and playing alone. He lies in the laurels, he runs on the grass, he sings when you tinkle the musical glass. Whene'er you are happy and cannot tell why, the friend of the children is sure to be by. He loves to be little, he hates to be big. 'Tis he that inhabits the caves that you dig. 'Tis he, when you play with your soldiers of tin, that sides with the Frenchmen and never can win. 'Tis he, when at night you go off to your bed, bids you go to your sleep and not trouble your head. For wherever they're lying, in cupboard or shelf, 'tis he will take care of your playthings himself. Robert Louis Stevenson. End of section 33. Recording by Clarica.
Section 34 of Childhood's Favorites and Fairy Stories. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information, or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Megan Kunkel. Childhood's Favorites and Fairy Stories by various authors. Section 34. I Saw Three Ships. I saw three ships go sailing in on Christmas Day, on Christmas Day. I saw three ships go sailing in on Christmas Day in the morning. Pray whither sailed the ships all three on Christmas Day, on Christmas Day. Pray whither sailed the ships all three on Christmas Day in the morning. Oh, they sailed into Bethlehem on Christmas Day, on Christmas Day. Oh, they sailed into Bethlehem on Christmas Day in the morning. And all the bells on earth shall ring on Christmas Day, on Christmas Day. And all the bells on earth shall ring on Christmas Day in the morning. And all the angels in heaven shall sing on Christmas Day, on Christmas Day. And all the angels in heaven shall sing on Christmas Day in the morning. And all the souls on earth shall sing on Christmas Day, on Christmas Day. And all the souls on earth shall sing on Christmas Day in the morning. End of section 34.
Section 35 of Childhood's Favorites and Fairy Stories. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Clarica. Childhood's Favorites and Fairy Stories by various authors. Section 35. A was an ant. A was an ant who seldom stood still, and who made a nice house in the side of a hill. A, nice little ant. B was a book with a binding of blue, and pictures and stories for me and for you. B, nice little book. C was a cat who ran after a rat, but his courage did fail when she seized on his tail. C, crafty old cat. D was a duck with spots on his back, who lived in the water and always said quack. D, dear little duck. E was an elephant, stately and wise. He had tusks and a trunk and two queer little eyes. E, oh, what funny small eyes. F was a fish who was caught in a net, but he got out again and is quite alive yet. F, lively young fish. G was a goat who was spotted with brown. When he did not lie still, he walked up and down. G, good little goat. H was a hat which was all on one side. Its crown was too high, and its brim was too wide. H, oh, what a hat! I was some ice, so white and so nice, but which nobody tasted, and so it was wasted. I, all that good ice. J was a jackdaw who hopped up and down in the principal street of a neighboring town. J, all through the town. K was a kite which flew out of sight above houses so high quite into the sky. K, fly away, kite. L was a light which burned all the night and lighted the gloom of a very dark room. L, useful, nice light. M was a mill which stood on a hill and turned round and round with a loud hummy sound. M, useful old mill. N was a net which was thrown in the sea to catch fish for dinner for you and for me. N, nice little net. O was an orange so yellow and round, when it fell off the tree it fell down to the ground. O, down to the ground. P was a pig who was not very big, but his tail was too curly, and that made him surly. P, cross little pig. Q was a quail with a very short tail, and he fed upon corn in the evening and morn. Q, quaint little quail. R was a rabbit who had a bad habit of eating the flowers in gardens and bowers. R, naughty fat rabbit. S was the sugar tongs, nippity-nee, to take up the sugar to put in our tea. S, nippity-nee. T was a tortoise all yellow and black. He walked slowly away, and he never came back. T, Torty never came back. U was an urn all polished and bright, and full of hot water at noon and at night. U, useful old urn. V was a villa which stood on a hill by the side of a river and close to a mill. V, nice little villa. W was a whale with a very long tail, whose movements were frantic across the Atlantic. W, monstrous old whale. X was King Xerxes, who more than all Turks is, renowned for his fashion of fury and passion. X, angry old Xerxes. Y was a yew which flourished and grew by a quiet abode near the side of a road. Y, dark little yew. Z was some zinc so shiny and bright, which caused you to wink in the sun's merry light. Z, beautiful zinc. Edward Lear. End of section 35.
Section 36 of Childhood's Favorites and Fairy Stories. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Vera and Real. Childhood's Favorites and Fairy Stories by various authors. The Table and the Chair. Set the table to the chair. You can hardly be aware how I suffer from the heat and from chill veins on my feet. If we took a little walk, we might have a little talk. Pray let us take the air. Set the table to the chair. Set the chair onto the table. Now you know we are not able. How foolishly you talk when you know we cannot walk. Set the table with a sigh. It can do no harm to try. I've as many legs as you. Why can't we walk on two? So they both went slowly down and walked about the town. with a cheerful bumpy sound as they toddled round and round. And everybody cried as they hastened to their side, "See, the table and the chair have come out to take the air." But in going down an alley to a castle in the valley, they completely lost their way and wandered all the day, till, to see them safely back, they paid a ducky quack, and a beetle, and a mouse, who took them to the house. Then they whispered to each other, "Oh, delightful little brother, what a lovely walk we've taken! Let us dine on beans and bacon." So the ducky and the beetle, Brownie Mousy and the beetle, dined and danced upon their heads, till they toddled to their beds. And off the table and the chair.
Section 37 of Children's Favorites and Fairy Stories. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Ralph Snelson. Children's Favorites and Fairy Stories by various authors. Section 37, Precocious Piggy. Where are you going, you little pig? I'm leaving my mother, I'm growing so big. So big, young pig, so young, so big. What, leaving your mother, you foolish young pig? Where are you going to, you little pig? I've got a new spade, and I'm going to dig. To dig, little pig? A little pig dig? Well, I never saw a pig with a spade that could dig. Where are you going to, you little pig? Why, I'm going to have a nice ride in a gig. In a gig, little pig? What, a pig in a gig? Well, I never yet saw a pig ride in a gig. Where are you going to, you little pig? Well, I'm going to the Queen's Head to have a nice swig. A swig, little pig? A pig have a swig? What, a pig at the Queen's Head having a swig? Where are you going to, you little pig? Why, I'm going to the ball to dance a fine jig. A jig, little pig? A pig dance a jig? Well, I never before saw a pig dance a jig. Where are you going to, you little pig? I'm going to the fair to run a fine rig. A rig, little pig? A pig run a rig? Well, I never before saw a pig run a rig. Where are you going to, you little pig? I'm going to the barber's to buy me a wig. A wig, little pig? A pig in a wig? Why, who ever before saw a pig in a wig? End of section 37.
Section 38 of Childhood's Favorites and Fairy Stories. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Johnny J.T. Childhood's Favorites and Fairy Stories by various authors. Section 38. A Boy's Song by James Hogg. Where the pools are bright and deep, where the great trout lies asleep, up the river and o'er the lea, that's the way for Billy and me. Where the blackbird sings the latest, where the hawthorn blooms the sweetest, where the nestlings chirp and flee, that's the way for Billy and me. Where the mowers mowed the cleanest, where the hay lies thick and greenest, there to trace the homeward bee, that's the way for Billy and me. Where the hazel bank is steepest, where the shadow falls the deepest, where the clustering nuts fall free, that's the way for Billy and me. Why the boys should drive away little sweet maidens from the play, or love to banter and fight so well, that's the thing I never could tell. But this I know, I love to play through the meadow among the hay, up the water and o'er the lea, that's the way for Billy and me. End of section 38, A Boy's Song. This recording by Johnny J.T. is in the public domain.
Section 39 of Childhood's Favorites and Fairy Stories. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Clarica. Childhood's Favorites and Fairy Stories by various authors. Section 39. Buttercups and Daisies. Buttercups and daisies, oh, the pretty flowers, coming ere the springtime to tell of sunny hours. While the trees are leafless, while the fields are bare, buttercups and daisies spring up here and there. Ere the snowdrop peepeth, ere the crocus bold, ere the early primrose opes its paly gold, somewhere on the sunny bank buttercups are bright, somewhere 'mong the frozen grass peeps the daisy white. Little hardy flowers, like to children poor, playing in their sturdy health by their mother's door. Purple with the north wind, yet alert and bold, fearing not and caring not, though they be a cold. What to them is winter? What are stormy showers? Buttercups and daisies are these human flowers. He who gave them hardships and a life of care, gave them likewise hardy strength and patient hearts to bear. Mary Howitt. End of section 33.
Section 40 of Childhood's Favorites and Fairy Stories. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Kaylee K. Childhood's Favorites and Fairy Stories by various authors, Section 40. The Violet by Jane Taylor. Down in a green and shady bed a modest violet grew. Its stalk was bent, it hung its head, as if to hide from view. And yet it was a lovely flower, its color bright and fair. It might have graced a rosy bower, instead of hiding there. Yet there it was content to bloom, in modest tints arrayed, and there diffuse its sweet perfume within the silent shade. Then let me to the valley go, this pretty flower to see, that I may also learn to grow in sweet humility. End of section 40, The Violet. This recording by Kaylee K. is in the public domain.
Section 41 of Childhood's Favorites and Fairy Stories. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Clarica. Childhood's Favorites and Fairy Stories by various authors. Section 41. If Ever I See. If ever I see on bush or tree young birds in their pretty nest, I must not in play steal the birds away to grieve their mother's breast. My mother, I know, would sorrow so should I be stolen away. So I'll speak to the birds in my softest words, nor hurt them in my play. And when they can fly in the bright blue sky, they'll warble a song to me. And then if I'm sad, it will make me glad to think they are happy and free. Lydia Maria Child. End of section 41.
Section 42 of Children's Favorites and Fairy Stories. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Ralph Snelson. Childhood's Favorites and Fairy Stories by various authors. Section 42. The Little Land. When at home alone I sit, and am very tired of it, I have just to shut my eyes, to go sailing through the skies, to go sailing far away, to the pleasant land of play. to the fairyland afar, where the little people are, where the clover tops are trees, and the rain pools are the seas, and the leaves like little ships sail about on tiny trips, and above the daisy tree, through the grasses, high o'erhead the bumblebee hums and passes. In that forest to and fro I can wander, I can go. See the spider and the fly and the ants go marching by, carrying parcels with their feet. Down the green and grassy street I can in the sorrel sit, where the ladybird alit. I can climb the jointed grass, and on high see the greater swallows pass in the sky, and the round sun rolling by, heeding no such thing as I. Through the forest I can pass, till, as in a looking-glass, humming fly and daisy tree and my tiny self I see, painted very clear and neat on the rain pool at my feet. Should a leaflet come to land, drifting near to where I stand, straight I'll board that tiny boat, round the rain-pooled sea to float. Little thoughtful creatures sit on the grassy coasts of it. Little things with lovely eyes see me sailing with surprise. Some are clad in armor green, these have sure to battle been. Some are pied with every hue, black and crimson, gold and blue. Some have wings and swift are gone, but they all look kindly on. When my eyes I once again open and see all things plain, high bare walls, great bare floor, great big knobs on drawer and door, great big people perched on chairs, stitching tucks and mending tears, each a hill that I could climb, and talking nonsense all the time. Oh dear me, that I could be a sailor on the rain-pool sea, a climber in the clover tree, and just come back a sleepy head, late at night, to go to bed. End of section 42.
Section 43 of Childhood's Favorites and Fairy Stories. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Sarah Williams. Childhood's Favorites and Fairy Stories by various authors. Section 43, A Lobster Quadrille. "Will you walk a little faster?" said a whiting to a snail. "There's a porpoise close behind us, and he's treading on my tail. See how eagerly the lobsters and the turtles all advance. They are waiting on the shingle. Will you come and join the dance? Will you, won't you, will you, won't you, will you join the dance? Will you, won't you, will you, won't you join the dance?" You can really have no notion how delightful it will be when they take us up and throw us with the lobsters out to sea. But the snail replied, too far, and gave a look askance. Said he thanked the whiting kindly, but he would not join the dance. Would not, could not, would not, could not, would not join the dance. Would not, could not, would not, could not join the dance. "What matters it how far we go?" his scaly friend replied. "There is another shore, you know, upon the other side. The further off from England, the nearer is to France. Then turn not pale, beloved snail, but come and join the dance. Will you, won't you, will you, won't you, will you join the dance? Will you, won't you, will you, won't you join the dance?" Lewis Carroll. End of section 43. Recording by Sarah Williams, Germantown, Maryland, June 2008.
Section 44 of Childhood Favorites and Fairy Stories. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Ralph Snelson. Childhood's Favorites and Fairy Stories by various authors. Section 44. Where Go the Boats? Dark brown is the river, golden is the sand. It flows along forever, with trees on either hand. Green leaves a-floating, castles of the foam, boats of mine a-boating, where will all come home? On goes the river, and out past the mill, away down the valley, away down the hill. Away down the river 100 miles or more, other little children shall bring my boats ashore. End of section 44.
Section 45 of Childhood's Favorites and Fairy Stories. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Chris C. Childhood's Favorites and Fairy Stories by various authors. Section 45. The Wind and the Moon. Said the wind to the moon, I will blow you out. You stare in the air like a ghost in a chair, always looking what I am about. I hate to be watched, I'll blow you out. The wind blew hard, and out went the moon, so deep on a heap of clouds to sleep. Down lay the wind, and slumbered soon, muttering low, I've done for that moon. He turned in his bed, and she was there again. On high in the sky, with her one ghost eye, the moon shone white and alive and plain. Said the wind, I will blow you out again. The wind blew hard, and the moon grew dim. With my sledge and my wedge I have knocked off her edge. If only I blow right fierce and grim, the creature will soon be dimmer than dim. He blew, and she thinned to a thread. One puff more is enough to blow her to snuff. One good puff more where the last was bred, and glimmer, glimmer, glum will go the thread. He blew a great blast, and the thread was gone. In the air nowhere was a moonbeam bare. Far off and harmless the shy stars shone. Sure and certain the moon was gone. The wind he took to his revels once more. On down in town like a merry mad clown he leaped and hallooed with whistle and roar. What's that? The glimmering thread once more! He flew in a rage, he danced and blew, but in vain was the pain of his bursting brain, for still the broader moon scrap grew. The broader he swelled, his big cheeks and blue. Slowly she grew, till she filled the night, and shone on her throne in the sky alone, a matchless, wonderful, silvery light. Radiant and lovely, the queen of the night. Said the wind, what a marvel of power am I! With my breath, good faith, I blew her to death. First blew her away, right out of the sky, then blew her in. What strength have I? But the moon, she knew nothing about the affair, for high in the sky, with her one white eye, motionless miles above the air, she had never heard the great wind blare. George MacDonald. End of section 45.
Section 46 of Childhood's Favorites and Fairy Stories. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Childhood's Favorites and Fairy Stories by various authors. Section 46. Where are you going, my pretty maid? I am going to milking, sir, she said. May I go with you, my pretty maid? You're kindly welcome, sir, she said. What is your father, my pretty maid? My father's a farmer, sir, she said. What is your fortune, my pretty maid? My face is my fortune, sir, she said. Then I won't marry you, my pretty maid. Nobody asked you, sir, she said. End of section 46.
Section 47 of Childhood's Favorites and Fairy Stories. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Childhood's Favorites and Fairy Stories by various authors. Section 47. The Lost Doll by Charles Kingsley. I once had a sweet little doll, dears, the prettiest doll in the world. Her cheeks were so red and white, dears, and her hair was so charmingly curled. But I lost my poor little doll, dears, as I played on the heath one day, and I cried for her more than a week, dears, but I never could find where she lay. I found my poor little doll, dears, as I played on the heath one day. Folks say she is terribly changed, dears, for her paint is all washed away, and her arms trodden off by the cows, dears, and her hair not the least bit curled. Yet for old sake's sake, she is still, dears, the prettiest doll in the world. End of section 47. Recording by Rachel Linton, Bristol, UK. Section 48 of Childhood's Favourites and Fairy Stories. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Childhood's Favourites and Fairy Stories by various authors. Section 48. Foreign Lands by Robert Louis Stevenson. Up into the cherry tree who should climb but little me? I held the trunk with both my hands and looked abroad on foreign lands. I saw the next door garden lie adorned with flowers before my eye, and many pleasant faces more that I had never seen before. I saw the dimpling river pass and be the sky's blue looking glass, the dusty roads go up and down with people tramping into town. If I could find a higher tree, farther and farther I should see, to where the grown-up river slips into the sea among the ships, to where the roads on either hand lead onward into fairyland, where all the children dine at 5 and all the playthings come alive. End of section 48. Recording by Rachel Linton, Bristol, UK. Section 49 of Childhood's Favourites and Fairy Stories. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Childhood's Favourites and Fairy Stories by various authors. Section 49. Bed in Summer by Robert Louis Stevenson. In winter I get up at night and dress by yellow candlelight. In summer, quite the other way, I have to go to bed by day. I have to go to bed and see the birds still hopping on the tree, or hear the grown-up people's feet still going past me in the street. And does it not seem hard to you, when all the sky is clear and blue, and I should like so much to play, to have to go to bed by day? End of section 49. Recording by Rachel Linton, Bristol, UK. Section 50 of Childhood's Favourites and Fairy Stories. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Childhood's Favourites and Fairy Stories by various authors. Section 50. Try Again by Anonymous. 'Tis a lesson you should heed. Try, try, try again. If at first you don't succeed, try, try, try again. Once or twice though you should fail, try again. If you would at last prevail, try again. If we strive, 'tis no disgrace, though we may not win the race. What should you do in that case? Try again. If you find your task is hard, try again. Time will bring you your reward. Try again. All that other folks can do, with your patience, should not you? Only keep this rule in view. Try again. End of section 50. Recording by Rachel Linton, Bristol, UK. Section 51 of Childhood's Favourites and Fairy Stories. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Childhood's Favourites and Fairy Stories by various authors. Section 51. A Good Play by Robert Louis Stevenson. We built a ship upon the stairs, all made of the back bedroom chairs, and filled it full of sofa pillows, to go a-sailing on the billows. We took a saw and several nails and water in the nursery pails, and Tom said, "Let us also take an apple and a slice of cake," which was enough for Tom and me to go a-sailing on till tea. We sailed along for days and days, and had the very best of plays, but Tom fell out and hurt his knee, so there was no one left but me. End of section 51. Recording by Rachel Linton, Bristol, UK.
Section 52 of Childhood Favorites and Fairy Stories. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Ralph Snelson. Childhood's Favorites and Fairy Stories by various authors. Section 52. Good night and good morning. A fair little girl sat under a tree, sewing as long as her eyes could see, then smoothed her work and folded it right, and said, "Dear work, good night, good night." Such a number of rooks came over her head, crying "Caw, caw," on their way to bed. She said as she watched their curious flight, "Little black things, good night, good night." The horses neighed and the oxen lowed, the sheep's baa, baa came over the road, all seeming to say with a quiet delight, "Good little girl, good night, good night." She did not say to the sun good night, though she saw him there like a ball of light, for she knew he had God's time to keep all over the world and never could sleep. The tall pink foxglove bowed his head, the violets curtsied and went to bed, and good little Lucy tied up her hair and said on her knees her favorite prayer. And while on her pillow she softly lay, she knew nothing more till again it was day. And all things said to the beautiful sun, "Good morning, good morning, our work is begun." End of section 52.
Section 53 of Childhood's Favorites and Fairy Stories. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Vera Unreal. Childhood's Favorites and Fairy Stories by various authors. The Wind. I saw you toss the kites on high and blow the birds about the sky. And all around I heard you pass, like lady skirts across the grass. O wind, a-blowing all day long, O wind, that sings so loud a song. I saw the different things you did, but always you yourself you hid. I felt you push, I heard you call, I could not see yourself at all. O wind, a-blowing all day long, O wind, that sings so loud a song. O you that are so strong and cold, O blower, are you young or old? Are you a beast of field and tree, or just a stronger child than me? O wind, a-blowing all day long, O wind that sings so loud a song. End of section number 53.
Section 54 of Childhood's Favorites and Fairy Stories. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Clarica. Childhood's Favorites and Fairy Stories by various authors. Section 54. The Spider and the Fly. "Will you walk into my parlor?" said the spider to the fly. "'Tis the prettiest little parlor that ever you did spy. The way into my parlor is up a winding stair, and I have many curious things to show you when you are there." "Oh no, no," said the little fly, "to ask me is in vain, for who goes up your winding stair can ne'er come down again. I'm sure you must be weary, dear, with soaring up so high. Will you rest upon my little bed? Said the spider to the fly. There are pretty curtains drawn around, the sheets are fine and thin, and if you like to rest a while, I'll snugly tuck you in. Oh, no, no, said the little fly, for I've often heard it said, they never, never wake again who sleep upon your bed. Said the cunning spider to the fly, dear friend, what can I do to prove the warm affection I've always felt for you? I have within my pantry good store of all that's nice. I'm sure you're very welcome. Will you please to take a slice? Oh, no, no, said the little fly, kind sir, that cannot be. I've heard what's in your pantry I do not wish to see. Sweet creature, said the spider, you're witty and you're wise. How handsome are your gauzy wings, how brilliant are your eyes. I have a little looking-glass upon my parlour shelf. If you'll step in one moment, dear, you shall behold yourself. Thank you, gentle sir, she said, for what you're pleased to say, and, bidding you good morning now, I'll call another day. The spider turned him round about and went into his den, for well he knew the silly fly would soon come back again. So he wove a subtle web in a little corner sly, and set his table ready to dine upon the fly. Then came out to his door again, and merrily did sing, Come hither, hither, pretty fly, with pearl and silver wing. Your robes are green and purple, there's a crest upon your head. Your eyes are like the diamond bright, but mine are dull as lead. Alas, alas, how very soon this silly little fly, hearing his wily, flattering words, came slowly flitting by. With buzzing wings she hung aloft, then near and nearer drew, thinking only of her brilliant eyes and green and purple hue, thinking only of her crested head. Poor foolish thing, at last. Up jumped the cunning spider, and fiercely held her fast. He dragged her up his winding stair, into the dismal den, within his little parlour, but she ne'er came out again. And now, dear little children, who may this story read, to idle, silly, flattering words, I pray you ne'er give heed. Unto an evil counsellor, close heart and ear and eye, and take a lesson from this tale of the spider and the fly. Mary Howitt. End of section 54.
Section 55 of Children's Favorites and Fairy Stories. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Reading by Ralph Snelson. Childhood's Favorites and Fairy Stories by various authors. Section 55. Let dogs delight to bark and bite. Let dogs delight to bark and bite, for God hath made them so. Let bears and lions growl and fight, for 'tis their nature to. But children, you should never let your angry passions rise. Your little hands were never made to tear each other's eyes. Let love through all your actions run, and all your words be mild. Live like the Blessed Virgin's Son, that sweet and lovely child. His soul was gentle as a lamb, and as his stature grew, he grew in favor both with man and God his Father too. Now, Lord of all, he reigns above, and from his heavenly throne he sees what children dwell in love, and marks them for his own. End of section 55.
Section 56 of Childhood's Favorite and Fairy Stories. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Kaylee K. Childhood's Favorite and Fairy Stories by various authors, Section 56. Child's Evening Hymn by Sabine Baring-Gould. Now the day is over, night is drawing nigh. Shadows of the evening steal across the sky. Now the darkness gathers, stars begin to peep. Birds and beasts and flowers soon will be asleep. Jesu, give the weary calm and sweet repose. With thy tenderest blessing may our eyelids close. Grant to little children visions bright of thee. Guard the sailors tossing on the deep blue sea. Comfort every sufferer watching late in pain. Those who plan some evil from their sin restrain. Through the long night watches may thine angels spread their white wings above me, watching round my bed. When the morning wakens, then may I arise, pure and fresh and sinless, in thy holy eyes. Glory to the Father, glory to the Son, and to thee, blessed Spirit, whilst all ages run. Amen. End of section 56, Child's Evening Hymn. This recording, read by Kaylee Kay, is in the public domain.
Section 57 of Childhood Favorites and Fairy Stories. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Ralph Snelson. Childhood's Favorites and Fairy Stories by various authors. Section 57. Hansel and Gretel. Many years ago, a woodcutter and his wife, with their 2 children, Hansel and Gretel, lived upon the outskirts of a dense wood. They were very poor, so that when a famine fell upon the land and bread became dear, they could no longer afford to buy sufficient food for the whole family. One night, as the poor man lay tossing on his hard bed, he cried aloud in his grief and anguish, "Alas, what will become of us? How can I feed my hungry little ones when we have no food for ourselves?" "Listen to me, good man," answered his wife, who was stepmother to the children. "As it is no longer possible for us to keep our children, we will take them into the wood with us tomorrow, light a fire for them, and give each a piece of bread, and leave them. They will not easily find their way back, and so we shall be rid of the burden of them." But the father said, "No, no, I could not find it in my heart to leave my darlings to perish. The wild beasts would tear them limb from limb." "Then," answered the wife, "we must all 4 die of hunger." She gave her husband no peace until he promised to do as she wished, and at last, very unwillingly, he consented. Now the 2 children had been too hungry to go to sleep that night, and so it happened that they overheard all that their parents were saying. Gretel wept bitterly, but brave little Hansel did his best to comfort her. "Don't be afraid," he said, "I will take care of you." As soon as his father and stepmother were asleep, he slipped on his coat, and, opening the door softly, went out into the garden. The moon was shining brightly, and by its light he could see the little white pebbles that lay scattered in front of the house, shining like little pieces of silver. He stooped and filled his pockets as full as he could, and then went back to Gretel, and once more bidding her be comforted, for God would be sure to watch over them, he jumped into bed, and they both fell fast asleep. Early in the morning, before the sun had risen, the stepmother came and wakened the children. "Rise, little lie-a-beds," she said, "and come with us into the wood to gather fuel." She gave them each a piece of bread for their dinner, and told them to be sure not to eat it too soon, for they would get nothing more. Gretel carried the bread in her pinafore, because Hansel had his pockets full, and then they all set out upon their way to the wood. As they trudged along, the father noticed that his little son kept turning back to look at the house. "Take care, my boy," he said, "or you will slip. What are you looking at so earnestly?" "I am watching my kitten, father. She is sitting on the roof to bid me good-bye." "Silly little lad, that is not your cat," said the stepmother. "It is only the morning sun shining on the chimney." But Hansel had not been watching his cat at all. He had stayed behind to drop the pebbles upon the path. When they reached the thickest part of the forest, the father bade the children gather wood, that he might kindle a fire for them, so that they might rest beside it and warm themselves whilst he and his wife were cutting the fuel. So they gathered a pile of brushwood and twigs, and as soon as it was well alight, the parents left them, promising to return as soon as they had finished their work. Hansel and Gretel sat down by the fire, and when midday came they ate their bread and sat listening to the strokes of their father's axe, thinking all the time that he was near to them. But what they heard was only a dry branch which the man had bound to a tree, so that the wind swung it hither and thither, and the noise made it deceive the children. At last the poor tired little eyelids closed, and side by side brother and sister fell asleep. When they awoke, the night was very dark, and Gretel was frightened and began to cry. Hansel put his arms around her and whispered, "Wait, dearie, till the moon rises. We shall soon find our way home then." As soon as the bright moon rose, Hansel took his little sister by the hand, and all night long they followed the track of the little white pebbles until at daybreak they came to their father's house. They knocked at the door, and no sooner did the stepmother open it than she began to scold them for having stayed out so long in the wood. But the father greeted them kindly, for he had grieved sorely for his little ones. In a short time they were as badly off as ever, and one night they again heard their mother trying to persuade her husband to take them out into the wood and lose them. "There is nothing left in the house but half a loaf of bread," she said. "For our sakes it is better to get rid of the children. But this time we will lead them farther away, so that they will not be able to find their way home." But the man would not agree. "Better to divide our last morsel with them," he said, "and then die together." His wife would not listen to what he said, but scolded him for his want of thought for her, and at last the poor man gave way a second time, just as he had done at first. But the children had overheard all that was said, and as soon as the mother and father were asleep, Hansel stole down to the door, meaning to go and collect pebbles as he had done before. But the door was locked and bolted, and he could not get out. "Never mind, Gretel," he said, consolingly. "The good God will surely help us." Early in the morning the woman wakened the children, and giving them a small piece of bread, bade them follow her and their father into the wood. As they went, Hansel crumbled his morsel of bread in his pocket, and strewed the crumbs upon the path. "Come, Hansel," said the father, "don't loiter so, son. What can you see to stare at so often?" "My little dove, father. It is sitting on the housetop, bidding me good-bye." "Nonsense," said the woman. "It is not your dove. It is only the rising sun shining upon the chimney." Hansel did not answer, but he went on strewing his crumbs carefully until the last morsel of bread was gone. Deeper and deeper into the wood they went, where the children had never been before. There a great fire was kindled, and the mother said, "Stay here, children, whilst your father and I go to cut wood. If you are tired, you may sleep a while, and we will fetch you when it is time to go home." When dinner time came, Gretel divided her piece of bread with Hansel, because he had scattered all his share upon the road, and then they went to sleep. The evening shadows fell, but still no one came to fetch the poor children, and it was not until midnight that they awakened. Hansel put his arms around his sister and told her not to fear, for when the moon rose they would easily be able to see the crumbs, and so find their way home again. So when the moon rose they set out upon their way. But alas! there were no crumbs to be seen, for the little birds that lived in the green wood were as hungry as the children, and had eaten them all up. "We will find the way somehow," cried cheerful little Hansel. But though they traveled all night long, and the next day too, they could not find it. Poor little mites, how tired and hungry they were, for they had nothing to eat but the berries that grew by the roadside. When at length the weary little feet could go no farther, the children lay down beneath a tree and slept. On the third day they were still as far away as ever, and it seemed to them that the longer they walked, the deeper they got into the wood, and they began to be afraid that they would die of cold and hunger. But presently, when the midday sun was shining brightly, they noticed a little snow-white bird singing so sweetly that they could not help but stay to listen. When the birdie's song was ended, he spread his wings and flew away. The children followed him until they reached a little house on the roof of which he perched. Then the children saw with surprise that the strange little house was built entirely of bread, roofed with cakes, and with windows of barley sugar. "See, Gretel," cried Hansel joyfully, "there is food for us in plenty. I will take a piece of the roof, and you shall have one of the windows." He stretched out his hand to help himself, and Gretel had already begun to nibble one of the window panes, when suddenly they heard a voice call from within, "Nibbly, nibbly, mouse, who's nibbling at my house?" The children answered quickly, "'Tis my Lady Wind that blows, as round about the house she goes." And then they went on eating as though nothing had happened, for the cake of which the roof was made just suited Hansel's taste, whilst the barley sugar window panes were better than any sweetmeat Gretel had ever tasted before. All at once the door of the cottage flew wide open, and out came an old woman leaning upon a crutch. The children were so frightened that they dropped their food and clung to each other. The old woman nodded her head to them and said, "Who brought you here, my pets? Come inside, come inside. No one will hurt you." She took their hands and led them into the house, and set before them all kinds of delicious foods, milk, sugared pancakes, apples, and nuts. When they had finished their meal, she showed them two cozy little white beds, and as Hansel and Gretel lay snugly tucked up in them, they thought to themselves that surely they had now found the most delightful place in the whole wide world. But the old woman had only pretended to be friendly and kind, for she was really a wicked old witch who was always lying in wait to catch little children. Indeed, she had built the little house of bread and cakes especially to entice them in. Whenever anyone came into her power, she cooked and ate him, and thought what a fine feast she had had. Witches have red eyes and cannot see far, but they have keen scent like animals, and can tell at once when a human being is near to them. As soon as Hansel and Gretel came into her neighborhood, she laughed to herself and said mockingly, "Ha, ha! They are mine already. They will not easily escape me." Early in the morning, before the children were awake, she stood beside them and admired their rosy cheeks and soft round limbs. "What nice titbits for me!" murmured she. Then, seizing Hansel by the hand, she led him to a little stable, and in spite of his cries and screams, shut him up and left him. Then she shook Gretel until she was awake, and bade her get up at once and carry food and drink to her brother, and it must be of the best too, for she wished to fatten him. "When he is nice and plump, I shall eat him," said the cruel old witch. Gretel wept bitterly, but it was quite in vain, for she was obliged to do the witch's bidding, and every day she cooked the choicest food for her brother, while she herself lived upon nothing but oyster shells. Day by day the old woman visited the stable, and called to Hansel to put his finger through the window bars, that she might see if he were getting fat. But the little fellow held out a bone instead, and as her eyes were dim with age, she mistook the bone for the boy's finger, and thought how thin and lean he was. When a whole month had passed without Hansel becoming the least bit fatter, the old witch lost patience, and declared she would wait no longer. "Hurry, Gretel," she said to the little girl. "Fill the pot with water for tomorrow. Be he lean or fat, Hansel shall be cooked for my dinner." The tears chased each other down Gretel's cheeks as she carried in the water, and she sobbed aloud in her grief. "Dear God," she cried, "we have no one to help us but thou. Alas, if only the wild beasts in the wood had devoured us, at least we should have died together." "Cease your chattering," cried the old witch angrily. "It will not help you, so you may as well be still." The next morning poor Gretel was forced to light the fire and hang the great pot of water over it. And then the witch said, "First we will bake. I have kneaded the dough and heated the oven. You shall creep inside it to see if it is hot enough to bake the bread." But Gretel guessed that the old witch meant to shut the door upon her and roast her, so she pretended that she did not know how to get in. "Silly goose," said the witch, "the door is wide enough, to be sure. Why, even I could get inside it." As she spoke, she popped her head into the oven. In a moment Gretel sprang towards her, pushed her inside, shut the iron door, and shut the bolt. Oh, how she squealed and shrieked! But Gretel ran off as fast as she could, and so there was an end of the cruel old witch. Quick as thought, Gretel ran to her brother. "We are saved, Hansel," she cried, opening the door of the stable. "The wicked old witch is dead." Hansel flew from his prison as a bird from its cage, and the two happy little children kissed each other and jumped for joy. No longer afraid of the old witch, they entered the house hand in hand, and they saw that in every corner of the room were boxes of pearls and diamonds and all kinds of precious gems. "Ah," said Hansel merrily, "these are better than pebbles, Gretel," and he stuffed his pockets with the jewels, whilst Gretel filled her pinafore. "Now," said Hansel, "we will leave the witch's wood behind us as fast as we can." So off they ran, and never stopped until they came to a lake upon which swam a large white duck. "How can we cross?" said Hansel, "for there is no bridge anywhere." "And no ship either," Gretel answered, "but we will ask the pretty white duck to carry us over." So they cried aloud, little duck, with wings so white, carry us over the waters bright." The duck came at once, and taking Hansel upon her back, carried him over to the other side, and then did the same for Gretel. They went merrily on their way, and very soon they found themselves in a part of the wood they knew quite well. When they saw the roof of their father's house in the distance, they began to run, and breathless with haste, half laughing and half crying, they rushed into the cottage and flung themselves into their father's arms. Oh, how pleased he was to see them once again, for he had not known a happy hour since he had left them alone in the wood. Gretel shook out her pinafore, and Hansel emptied his pockets, and the floor of the little room was quite covered with glittering precious stones. So now their troubles were at an end, for the cruel stepmother was dead, and Hansel and Gretel and their father lived together happily ever after. My story is ended, and see, there runs a little mouse, and the first who catches him shall have a fur cap made from his skin. End of section 57.
Section 58 of Childhood's Favorites and Fairy Stories. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Clarica. Childhood's Favorites and Fairy Stories by various authors. The Fair Catherine and Pif Paf Poultry. Good day, Father Holenth. How do you do? Very well, I thank you, Pif Paf Poultry. May I marry your daughter? Oh yes, if the mother Malcho, Milk Cow, the brother Hohenstolz, High and Mighty, the sister Castrote, Cheesemaker, and the fair Catherine are willing, it may be so. Where is, then, the mother Malcho? In the stable milking the cow. Good day, Mother Malcho. How do you do? Very well, I thank you, Pif Paf Poultry. May I marry your daughter? Oh yes, if the father Holenth, the brother Hohenstolz, the sister Castrote, and the fair Catherine are willing, it may be so. Where is, then, the brother Hohenstolz? In the yard chopping up the wood. Good day, brother Hohenstolz. How are you? Very well, I thank you, Pif Paf Poultry. May I marry your sister? Oh yes, if the father Holenth, the mother Malcho, the sister Castrote, and the fair Catherine are willing, it may be so. Where is, then, the sister Castrote? In the garden, cutting the cabbages. Good day, sister Castrote. How do you do? Very well, I thank you, Pif-paf Poltrie. May I marry your sister? Oh, yes, if the father Hollenthe, the mother Malcho, the brother Hohenstolz, and the fair Catherine are willing, it may be so. Where then is the fair Catherine? In her chamber, counting out her pennies. Good day, fair Catherine. How do you do? Very well, I thank you, Pif-paf Poltrie. Will you be my bride? Oh, yes, if the father Hollenthe, the mother Malcho, the brother Hohenstolz, and the sister Kâsetraut are willing, so am I. How much money have you, fair Catherine? 14 pennies in bear money, 2.5 farthings owing to me, 1/2 pound of dried apples, a handful of prunes, and a handful of roots. And don't you call that a capital dowry? Pif-paf Poltrie, what trade are you? Are you a tailor? Better than that. A shoemaker? Better still. A ploughman? Better still. A joiner? Better still. A smith? Better still. A miller? Better still. Perhaps a broom binder? Yes, so I am. Now, is that not a pretty trade? End of section 58.
Section 59 of Childhood's Favorites and Fairy Stories. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Childhood's Favorites and Fairy Stories by various authors. Section 59. The Wolf and the Fox. A wolf, once upon a time, caught a fox. It happened one day that they were both going through the forest, and the wolf said to his companion, "Get me some food, or I will eat you up." The fox replied, "I know a farmyard where there are a couple of young lambs, which, if you wish, we will fetch." This proposal pleased the wolf, so they went, and the fox, stealing first one of the lambs, brought it to the wolf, and then ran away. The wolf devoured it quickly, but was not contented, and went to fetch the other lamb by himself. But he did it so awkwardly that he aroused the attention of the mother, who began to cry and bleat loudly, so that the peasants ran up. There they found the wolf, and beat him so unmercifully that he ran, howling and limping, to the fox, and said, "You have led me to a nice place, for when I went to fetch the other lamb, the peasants came and beat me terribly." "Why are you such a glutton, then?" asked the fox. The next day they went again into the fields, and the covetous wolf said to the fox, "Get me something to eat, or I will devour you." The fox said he knew a country house where the cook was going that evening to make some pancakes, and thither they went. When they arrived, the fox sneaked and crept around the house until he at last discovered where the dish was standing, out of which he stole 6 pancakes, and took them to the wolf, saying, "There is something for you to eat," and then ran away. The wolf dispatched these in a minute or two, and wishing to taste some more, he went and seized the dish, but took it away so hurriedly that it broke into pieces. The noise of it falling brought out the woman, who, as soon as she saw the wolf, called her people, who, hastening up, beat him with such a good will that he ran home to the fox, howling with 2 lame legs. "What a horrible place you have drawn me into now!" he cried. "The peasants have caught me and dressed my skin finely." "Why, then, are you such a glutton?" said the fox. When they went out again the 3rd day, the wolf limping along with weariness, he said to the fox, "Get me something to eat now, or I will devour you." The fox said he knew a man who had just killed a pig, and salted the meat down in a cask in his cellar, and that they could get at it. The wolf replied that he would go with him on the condition that he helped him if he could not escape. "Oh, of course I will, on mine own account," said the fox, and showed him the tricks and ways by which they could get into the cellar. When they went in, there was meat in abundance, and the wolf was enraptured at the sight. The fox, too, had a taste, but kept looking round while eating, and ran frequently to the hole by which they had entered, to see if his body would slip through it easily. Presently the wolf asked, "Why are you running about so, you fox, jumping in and out? "I want to see if anyone is coming," replied the fox cunningly, "but mind you do not eat too much." The wolf said he would not leave till the cask was quite empty, and meanwhile the peasant, who had heard the noise made by the fox, entered the cellar. The fox, as soon as he saw him, made a spring, and was through the hole in a jiffy, and the wolf tried to follow his example, but he had eaten so much that his body was too big for the opening, and he stuck fast. Then came the peasant with the cudgel, and beat him sorely, but the fox leaped away into the forest, very glad to get rid of the old glutton. End of section 59. The Wolf and the Fox.
Section 60 of Childhood Favorites and Fairy Stories. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Ralph Snelson. Childhood's Favorites and Fairy Stories by various authors. Section 60. Discreet Hans. Hans' mother asked, "Whither are you going, Hans?" "To Gretel's," replied he. "Behave well, Hans." "I will take care." "Good-bye, mother." "Good-bye, Hans." Hans came to Gretel. "Good day," said he. "Good day," replied Gretel. "What treasure do you bring today?" "I bring nothing. Have you anything to give?" Gretel presented Hans with a needle. "Good-bye," said he. "Good-bye, Hans." Hans took the needle, stuck it in a load of hay, and walked home behind the wagon. "Good evening, mother." "Good evening, Hans." "Where have you been?" "To Gretel's." "And what have you given her?" "Nothing. She has given me something." "What has Gretel given you?" "A needle," said Hans. "And where have you put it?" "In the load of hay." "Then you have behaved stupidly, Hans. You should put needles on your coat sleeve. To behave better, do nothing at all," thought Hans. "Whither are you going, Hans?" "To Gretel's, mother." "Behave well, Hans. I will take care. Good-bye, mother." "Good-bye, Hans." Hans came to Gretel. "Good day," said he. "Good day, Hans. What treasure do you bring?" "I bring nothing. Have you anything to give?" Gretel gave Hans a knife. "Good-bye, Gretel." "Good-bye, Hans." Hans took the knife, put it in his sleeve, and went home. "Good evening, mother." "Good evening, Hans. Where have you been?" "To Gretel's." "And what did you take to her?" "I took nothing. She has given to me." "And what did she give you?" "A knife," said Hans. "And where have you put it?" "In my sleeve." "Then you have behaved foolishly again, Hans. You should put knives in your pocket. To behave better, do nothing at all," thought Hans. "Whither are you going, Hans?" "To Gretel's, mother." "Behave well, Hans." "I will take care. Good-bye, mother." "Good-bye, Hans." Hans came to Gretel. "Good day, Gretel." "Good day, Hans. What treasure do you bring?" "I bring nothing. Have you anything to give?" Gretel gave Hans a young goat. "Good-bye, Gretel." "Good-bye, Hans." Hans took the goat, tied its legs, and put it in his pocket. Just as he reached home it was suffocated. "Good evening, mother." "Good evening, Hans. Where have you been?" "To Gretel's." "And what did you take to her?" "I took nothing. She gave to me." "And what did Gretel give you?" "A goat." "Where did you put it, Hans?" "In my pocket." "There you acted stupidly, Hans. You should have tied the goat with a rope. To behave better, do nothing," thought Hans. "Whither away, Hans?" "To Gretel's, mother." "Behave well, Hans." "I'll take care. Good-bye, mother." "Good-bye, Hans." Hans came to Gretel. "Good day," said he. "Good day, Hans. What treasure do you bring?" "I bring nothing. Have you anything to give?" Gretel gave Hans a piece of bacon. "Good-bye, Gretel." "Good-bye, Hans." Hans took the bacon, tied it with a rope, and swung it to and fro so that the dogs came and ate it up. When he reached home he held the rope in his hand, but there was nothing on it. "Good evening, mother," said he. "Good evening, Hans. Where have you been?" "To Grethel's, mother." "What did you take there?" "I took nothing. She gave to me." "And what did Grethel give you?" "A piece of bacon," said Hans. "And where have you put it?" "I tied it with a rope, swung it about, and the dogs came up and ate it up." "There you acted stupidly, Hans. You should have carried the bacon on your head." To behave better, do nothing, thought Hans. "Whither away, Hans?" "To Grethel's, mother." "Behave well, Hans." "I'll take care. Good-bye, mother." "Good-bye, Hans." Hans came to Grethel. "Good day," said he. "Good day, Hans. What treasure do you bring?" "I bring nothing. Have you anything to give?" Grethel gave Hans a calf. "Good-bye," said Hans. "Good-bye." Hans took the calf, set it on his head, and the calf scratched his face. "Good evening, mother." "Good evening, Hans. Where have you been?" "To Grethel's." "What did you take her?" "I took nothing. She gave to me." "And what did Grethel give you?" "A calf," said Hans. "And what did you do with it?" "I set it on my head, and it kicked my face." "Then you acted stupidly, Hans. You should have led the calf home and put it in the stall." To behave better, do nothing, thought Hans. "Whither away, Hans?" "To Grethel's, mother." "Behave well, Hans." "I'll take care. Good-bye, mother." "Good-bye, Hans." Hans came to Grethel. "Good day," said he. "Good day, Hans. What treasure do you bring?" "I bring nothing. Have you anything to give?" Grethel said, "I will go with you, Hans." Hans tied a rope round Grethel, led her home, put her in the stall, and made the rope fast, and then he went to his mother. "Good evening, mother." "Good evening, Hans. Where have you been?" "To Grethel's." "What did you take her?" "I took nothing." "What did Grethel give you?" "She gave nothing. She came with me." "And where have you left her, then?" "I tied her with a rope, put her in the stall, and threw in some grass." "Then you acted stupidly, Hans. You should have looked at her with friendly eyes." To behave better, do nothing, thought Hans. And then he went into the stall and made sheep's eyes at Grethel. And after that Grethel became Hans' wife. End of Section 60.